Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
Good morning. It is 5:06 a.m. It's O'Connor and Company. And there is a new indictment against President Trump because, of course, we should all be prepared for more shenanigans from the Democrats. Thanks so much for tuning in. We've got a great lineup today. At 6:35, we'll interview Cal Thomas. At 7:05, James Rosen on who's running the country. He asked that question yesterday. At 7:35, we'll talk to Peter Schweitzer, best-selling author and host of the podcast, The Drill Down. Then at 8:05, Brad Thor. And at 8:35, Governor Scott Walker of YAF on the new Reagan movie. I'm Julie Gunlock alongside Larry O'Connor. Good morning, Larry.
Good morning, Julie.
There you are.
Yes, a brand new indictment. How exciting is that?
Yes. We'll talk
it's
about
like
that
Christmas
later.
morning. I have a feeling, I think it was my friend Chris DeGaulle, our buddy Chris DeGaulle, said that Democrats are using these indictments and lawfare like a teenage boy uses Axe body spray after a workout. Like
As the mother of three teenage boys. And
yes.
you too.
And they just spread it everywhere. They think it's making a difference, but in the long run, it really doesn't make much of a difference at all.
Yes.
You still have the same stench.
Yes.
We'll get into the details of the indictments, but
Indeed.
I think it's going to end up it's going to do what all the other indictments did: help Trump.
That's the thing. Does no one realize that these all help him? Yeah. That this gives him more sympathy. It makes him more of the underdog.
Let's do it one more time.
Yeah,
let's try it again, guys.
Yeah.
We got nothing else.
But the good news is Kamala is finally sitting down for debate. An interview.
Well, and we've got an update on the debates. But yes, our long national nightmare is over. There will be an interview. Yeah, yes. Here's what's interesting.
But she's bringing her boyfriend with her.
She's her little emotional support running mate.
That's right. That's
right.
Yeah,
Tim Walz, which means that the questions will be cut in half. She'll only have to deal with half as many questions, I guess.
Yes, there'll be a lot of giggling.
Why do you think they decided that they would only do it if it was together? Is it so they could, will this keep it light?
I think she's very nervous. I think Tim Walz is more practiced on doing. I mean, he might be nervous now, too, because it turns out he's a fraud.
Yeah.
And he lied. And I mean, look, I doubt he'll be called out on it, but I bet this is not the same format he's going into, before when he was a House member, when he was a governor, and when all those lies were just allowed to float out there. But I do think she's very nervous. And I think that they believe that if she stumbles, he will step in.
I think that might be it. I think also they want to be able to make sure that they're on the same page. There was a report yesterday that one of the reasons they haven't let Tim Walz go out there for an interview is that he's not fully briefed on all the policies of the campaign. And I think that's because they still don't know what their policies are.
Well, because, poor Tim Walz, obviously I'm no fan of the guy, but, can you imagine running with this woman who's flip-flopping?
Right.
Like a dead fish on shore. She is all over the place. So I'm sure he's sitting here. Look, I got my talking points a couple weeks ago, and they've already changed. How do I keep track?
Now we want a wall. Now we don't want an electric vehicle mandate. Now we're just fine with fracking. Drill, baby, drill.
We're a tough prosecutor. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that's right. Also, imagine, it's going to be on CNN. It's going to be tomorrow night. It's going to be 9 p.m. It's pre-taped, by the way. You notice how Republicans always demand a live interview.
Yep.
But Democrats always demand pre-tape. There's two reasons for that. First, they know that the producers and the hosts are going to edit it in a very favorable way to make them look as good as possible. But number two, even if they do say something they shouldn't say and there's no walking it back and there's no fixing it, they'll have time to come up with their damage control,
Yeah.
Because there's a delay between when they actually said the stupid thing that they shouldn't have said and when it'll actually run, and so they can come up, they can get in front of it, they can preempt it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and they've gone with, and this is what's interesting is yesterday there was some news coming out that this is so strange, Larry, that the Harris campaign was essentially, the media companies were pitching reporters to the Harris campaign. And when I say pitch, if you know what this means, usually, if I want an op-ed to run, they will pitch it to different outlets and say, look, we've got this, or Julie's available to talk about X, Y, or Z. In this case, it was the media outlets pitching to the campaign. It's a complete reversal of how it normally works.
Yeah.
And essentially they were saying, essentially what they were saying is, we'll give you this reporter who will lob softballs and be very nice.
Right. And that brings us to the choice. They ended up doing it with Dana Bash. Now imagine this. Now, I know in the media world that we live in right now, a journalist, a teleprompter reader, really, because it's always going to be an anchor. It's always going to be a person whose real skill set is sitting in front of a camera, looking good, and reading a teleprompter. Yeah. Ultimately, that's the most important. You can be the best reporter in the world, but if you don't look good on camera and you're not adept at reading a teleprompter, you're not going to get a high-profile job.
Yep.
All right?
Yep.
So anybody, by definition, that they pick, their real skill set is that, looking good, reading a teleprompter. In our media age, that journalist, that reporter, that news anchor, that teleprompter reader, their goal going into this interview is not speaking truth to power and holding an elected official accountable and challenging them on behalf of the American people to make sure that they're intelligent enough and wily enough to be able to handle tough questions under pressure so that the American people see how they perform. All the things that you would like to think a reporter or journalist or news anchor or teleprompter reader is going to go into this interview with prioritizing. No. As far as they're concerned, Dana Bash right now is looking at this as like, yes, I'm the big get. I got her. I got the big get. I beat everybody else. I'm the one that they picked. And if I make this interview, get great ratings, then I'm going to be in great position for my next contract negotiation.
That's right.
At no point. See, if I were Dana, if they've said, we've decided who's going to be the first interview for Kamala Harris, it's Larry and Julie on O'Connor and Company. I would have spent a sleepless night last night staring at my ceiling fan with bloodshot eyes thinking, what have I done in my career to make them think that I'm that easy? What have I done wrong? Where did I go wrong in how I go about my business every single day that they have chosen me? Because clearly they think I'm a patsy.
Exactly.
And that's what Dana Bash should be thinking right now. What a dubious distinction. It's like the Hall of Shame.
It really is. And it is, you do have to wonder, Larry, do they know this and they're pretending to not know it and to really, how can you not know that you were chosen because you will give them everything they want?
Listen, the only reason they're doing this interview is because they think it will either help their campaign or it won't do that much damage to their campaign. That's it. There's no other calculation here. They have worked out the delta, they've done the spreadsheet, and they've decided that the damage done by not doing an interview is far worse than sitting and talking to Dana Bash.
Quick question, Larry. Do you think that Dana Bash, maybe she is aware of this, do you think there will be any tough questions?
Yeah, I think there will be a couple of obligatory tough questions.
That's it. Obligatory.
And I also think that the lines of communication are so tight between the Trump communications
They'll know what
team,
they are.
Or the Harris Yeah, exactly. I think that they are.
Yep.
They have such a relationship.
We're going to do a
now.
Donna Brazil. They're going to hand them those questions.
It won't be that, but it's like, well, can you give us an idea of the subject matter? What kind of topics? Just so, I want to make sure that we're well-versed.
They give them the exact written out question.
A little bit more on the details behind this interview and President Trump announcing that, yes, the debate has been finalized. Again, we think. We'll give you those details coming up in a moment. First, though, it's 5:15, WMAL traffic and weather. Every 10 minutes, first on the fives with Jamie Whitten in the Hadid Carpet Cleaning Traffic Center.
WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
Live
from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios.
Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
It's important to point out the contrast again here, by the way. Donald Trump has done multiple sit-down, standalone interviews with news anchors, with reporters, local news outlets, podcasters. I mean,
yes.
You name it.
So has J.D. Vance.
He and J.D. Vance have both been incredibly accessible to the media. Dana Bash has already done, I think, at least one sit-down with J.D. Vance, if not two at this point. This will be the one and only interview that we know of. It'll be the two of them, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. And honestly, there's like 3 hours worth of questions for each individual candidate here. I mean, just go through the litany of lies and misrepresentations that Tim Walz still has not answered for.
Right.
Why did you continue to call yourself Command Sergeant Major when you were at a political event and somebody referred to you as having served in combat? Why didn't you, like
Correct
other
them.
veterans, correct them and tell them that no, that's not the case?
Right.
Why do you say that you
and
did?
also respond to the people that were in your unit who have criticized you, including the chaplain.
Kamala Harris, you now support a wall. You don't support a ban on fracking. You don't support EV mandates. You don't support gun weapons confiscation, mandatory gun weapons confiscation. You don't, a whole litany of things. You're now running opposed to Bidenomics. So were you wrong then, or are you wrong now? Was Trump right about the wall, and you were wrong? What have you learned? What revealed divine information have you gotten in the last 4 years that made you change on all these fundamental issues?
Tell us about Abby Gate. Do you regret that decision? You were the last one in the room.
Yeah.
Right? Let's talk about that.
That's what the entirety of this interview should be. I guess there will be one or two. And they'll act like that's it.
Well, and the other thing that they will do, Larry, and this is very clear from you mentioned the multiple interviews with Trump and Vance, and we see this particularly with Vance, is it's not just that they will ask the tough question. They will allow the full answer, uninterrupted, unchallenged by Kamala and Tim Walz. It will not be 7 interruptions like J.D. Vance has to endure when he's trying to give an answer, or this constant, well, what about this, or what about that,
right.
or when it comes to like John Carl, who literally acted like a campaign intern, defending the candidate, the Democrat, Harris, on several points. So I think that's sort of one of the nuances here. It's not just that there won't be or there will be a few tough questions. It's that they will allow these candidates, Walz and Harris, to just uninterrupted give their answer, which for the listener is easier. When you're constantly being interrupted and then you're put on the defensive, it's a much smoother interview that they will receive as opposed to Vance and Trump.
Oh, it's a good reminder that the last time Kamala Harris actually gave an interview, believe it or not, was on CNN, not with Dana Bash, it was with Anderson Cooper, and it was right after the debate that Joe Biden had just engaged in. Listen to a little bit of it just so you know how she handles herself, especially when she's lying. Oh, see, I built it up so nicely with that timing.
Now I want to hear.
I know.
He went back and forth about where he stands on one of the most critical issues of freedom in America, which is the right of a woman to make decisions about their own body. He has been completely ambiguous and all over the place about where he stands on that issue, despite the fact that he hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade, and that's exactly what they did. And just 3 years ago, we commemorated the 2-year anniversary of Dobbs, wherein women across our country have been denied emergency health care,
all that may
suffered
be true.
miscarriages
All that may
to the
be
point
true.
that
But the president of the
these
United
facts are
States
very
was not
important.
able to make that case to Donald Trump on the stage tonight. I mean, you debated against then Vice President Biden 4 years ago, and he was a very different person on the stage 4 years ago when you debated him. That's certainly true, is it not?
Anderson, the point has to be performance in terms of what a president does. A president who incites an insurrection against the Capitol. No, but I got the point that you're making about a 1.5-hour debate tonight. I'm talking about 3.5 years of performance in.
Yeah, last time she was on CNN, she just lied about Joe Biden and his mental and physical capabilities and pretended like he had a great debate and there's nothing wrong with him.
Yeah, it raises a great question. Is Dana?
Dana. Yeah, is she going to bring up that? Is she going to say, why did you lie to us about Joe Biden?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. They've delayed this interview so long. There's so much to ask her about that there's no way they can get it all in just one interview. They're setting Dana Bash up for failure or for, just a prop job. By the way, did you also notice something else? And I only played you one snippet. This is actually like a 4-minute segment that she had. Anderson Cooper interrupted her a lot in this exchange.
Yeah.
And he kept coming in and saying, yeah, that may be fine. And never once did Kamala Harris say, I'm speaking. Mr. Anderson,
but she did.
Excuse
but
me.
I will say, Larry, and it was funny. You played that clip right after I said nobody will interrupt. Nobody, will interrupt her, and I don't think Dana Bash will interrupt her. But you could tell she was frustrated.
Yeah.
She was irritated, and that doesn't come off as.
I promise you, if Dana Bash does interrupt her, she won't say, "I'm speaking."
I'm
she only
speaking.
uses that. She only uses that debate trick when it's in a debate and it's a Republican that's interrupting her. Otherwise, it's fine. Hey, just treat me like one of the guys. 5:23.
WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
Good morning, everyone. It's 5:36. It's O'Connor and Company. Thanks so much for tuning in. Got a great lineup today. At 6:35, we'll talk to Cal Thomas. 7:05, James Rosen on Who's Running the Country. 7:35, best-selling author Peter Schweitzer on Tim Walz's trips to China. At 8:05, we'll talk to Brad Thor. He's the author of a new book, Shadow of Doubt. And at 8:35, Governor Scott Walker on the new Reagan movie. I'm Julie Gunlock alongside Larry O'Connor. Good morning, Larry.
Good morning, Julie. Yesterday, just 70 days out from the presidential election day, Jack Smith, the special prosecutor in, a handful of cases against Donald Trump, presented new indictments against the former president and current Republican nominee for president. Now, of course, you'll remember that this is the same Jack Smith whose even appointment as a special prosecutor has been called into question by a federal judge down in Florida. She threw out the case against Donald Trump over the bogus classified documents hoax that they tried to perpetrate on everybody. And she said, we don't think this federal court does not believe that you were properly appointed, constitutionally appointed as a special prosecutor because you were never confirmed by the Senate. So your office has no power. But that's certainly not stopping anybody in Joe Biden and Merrick Garland and Kamala Harris's highly politicized and weaponized Justice Department from trying to meddle with this election. 70 days before Election Day, new indictments brought forth against Donald Trump over the events of January 6th. And we'll get into the details of them in a moment, but understand these were also, by the way, a revamp of the initial charges that Jack Smith originally tried to file, where the Supreme Court in the land had to smack him down, give him a public spanking, just like they did when they unanimously overturned his conviction of Governor Bob McDonnell in Florida. This guy continues to fail upward. There's no repercussions for him using the law as a political weapon against his the opponents of his overseers, leadership of the Democratic Party. But here the Supreme Court said, no, you can't do this. He has immunity over these things. We're not going to let these convictions. So, boy, he didn't miss a beat. Two months later, here he is with brand new indictments. And I keep saying 60 days out, 70 days out. There's always been this unwritten but sort of written rule. It's not a law, but it's a rule that the Justice Department will not bring any kind of charges or even talk about an investigation of a politician 60 days out from Election Day, lest they change the vote, lest they affect that vote. And it seems like they're using the law and their power of their office to influence the election. Well, this was cleverly 70 days before Election Day. But as Donald Trump pointed out yesterday on his Truth Social, in some states, voting begins in like 10 days, in 2 weeks. Early voting has changed this whole idea of so and so many days before Election Day. No, people are voting in 2 weeks in some jurisdictions. So, and also, there's the other thing, Julie, and I'll hand it over to you. Nobody believes that this thing is going to be tried any time before Election Day. So what's the point?
Yeah.
He could have easily waited until after Election Day so that there was not even a whiff of attempting to interfere with elections or influence voters in their mind. Yeah. He could have waited, but he didn't. He did this on purpose, and there's only one answer to that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. This is entirely to sway voters, to give Tim Walz and Kamala Harris this talking point that he's under indictment, that he's facing jail, that he's, in all of this legal trouble that he tried to overturn, that a prosecutor it's so bad, the evidence is so clear that he's been charged. There's no other way to look at this. This is entirely political. And again, meant to sway the election. That's what's so funny is this is the kind of interference that is the real problem in this country.
Of course. This is because this is the government interfering. See, understand something. Whenever Jack Smith or anyone from the Justice Department put forth charges like this and indictments, it says the people of the United States. He does this in your name. They do this in your name. It's the people against Donald Trump, right? Well, not in my name. I don't want these charges put forth, but he's using this. It's the worst kind of election interference because it's coming from within your government trying to pick and choose the losers and winners. Like we talked about yesterday when the FBI, under Donald Trump as president, tried to meddle with the election by telling Facebook to delete stories about the Hunter Biden laptop, even though they knew full well that story was not a hoax. This is when it's within the government trying to pick the winner of the election. That's incredibly terrifying. The 4 indictments are basically a retooling of the original 4 indictments having to do with January 6th, which, by the way, does not include insurrection. Of the 1,000, thank you to the great journalist Julie Kelly, who continues to do such incredible hard work on the January 6th cases, and she always consistently points out that even though there have been hundreds of millions of dollars spent and over 1,000 people with charges, facing charges over January 6th, not one person has ever been charged with insurrection. But boy, that's not going to stop Dana Bash and Jake Tapper from using the words insurrection whenever they can.
Right.
They've retooled it to comply with the Supreme Court's new concerns about presidential immunity, which, of course, begs the question, if you could have brought these indictments this way before, why didn't you bring these indictments this way before when there was obviously a question about immunity? But the way they've gotten around it is that they highly emphasize his interactions with the Secretary of State of Georgia, which takes it, they claim, outside of his official acts as president. Now, I would disagree with that, and certainly Trump's lawyers will disagree with that. But here's the thing. Those interactions with Georgia already being adjudicated down in Fulton County, Georgia, and those charges are now up in the air and pending appeal as to whether they're properly brought. So he's just bringing more charges that are questionable and completely without any merit. But it's not. But understand something about Jack Smith and how this Justice Department works. If you think that these indictments are actually meant to go to trial and prosecute Donald Trump, you're wrong. That's not why they did this. That's right. I mean, Jack Smith can go on vacation now. He's done the filing. That's all that matters. He's given them, the Democrats, the talking point. Mission accomplished. Yes, exactly. And the media can continue to call Trump, an indicted nominee. Right. And, you're absolutely right. This won't do anything. It's interesting that it really was just an edit. They just took out the lines where he can be considered doing official business. Yeah. Well, and they did present it to a brand new grand jury who had not seen the original indictments. Right. They got their indictments, but of course they can because, ham sandwich, especially in D.C. Right. It's 5:44.
WMAL, making sense of mainstream media because the double standard is real. Download the WMAL app to stream us for free.
Let's turn our sights to the Senate for a moment, shall we, Julie Gunlock? Yes, Senate's up for grabs. And with Joe Manchin's retirement, it seems that West Virginia is a lock there for Republicans to pick up a seat, which would, of course, bring the Senate to a 50-50 deadlock, right? Yep. And so then you narrow down the battlegrounds to be states like Arizona, Michigan, Montana, Nevada, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. Now, all of those states that I just mentioned feature Democrats who are defending their incumbency. And it looks like right now in Montana, incumbent Senator John Tester is on the losing side of this. Wow. The challenger, the Republican, is sitting right now at a Real Clear Politics average of 49.8%. to Tester's 44.8. That would be the pickup Republicans need to get the majority. The other states right now, some of them are closer than others, but Democrats still have the lead. I think that Casey's in trouble in Pennsylvania, and we'll see how that one goes. I also think that Nevada could be a pickup for the Senate candidate Brown. This is the injured Iraq War veteran who's, I'm sure you've seen him around. He's a great guy. We interviewed him once. He's got much of his face has been burned. And Carrie Lake, don't count her out in Arizona as well. So there could be some pickups there. What people are now starting to whisper about is that of all places, the Republicans could pick up another seat in Maryland.
Wow.
Yeah, there's been a bit of a shift in this race. Angela Alsobrooks, who had a dominant 10-point lead coming out of the primaries and through much of the early months of the summer, is now facing a brand new poll. This is from the American Association of Retired Persons poll that shows Alsobrooks tied.
In other
Hogan.
words, people who show up and vote.
Yeah, exactly. So this could be now. I want to caution everybody. This is one poll. It is a new poll, and other polls don't show this kind of a lead, but it is tightening. Hogan, obviously a popular candidate with many Marylanders as a two-term governor, and so there is a shot here, as Josh Kroshauer calls it, the Hogan effect, where he does outperform what many people suspect in this very blue state of Maryland, because he does appeal to a certain type of Democrat who would never vote for a Republican unless it's Larry Hogan. So it's interesting to know now both of them. Right now, 7% are undecided. Both are polling at 46%. So it's very much up for grabs, even with this poll from AARP. Of course, I also want to caution Republicans that, listen, it is important to get the majority. It's important to have the gavels for the chairmanships. It's important to set the rules. Listen, if Chuck Schumer ends up in the majority, say goodbye to the filibuster and say goodbye to a 9-seat Supreme Court. That's what's at stake here.
And an altered say hello to an altered Supreme Court.
Right, if Kamala Harris should get the presidency. So you want that majority. And if getting Larry Hogan gets that majority, that's huge.
Yeah.
But I also think it's fair to say that you cannot count on Larry Hogan's vote on key issues facing the Senate.
Honestly, there's so much at stake here. Yeah, you're also not going to be able to count on Alsobrooks. So let's not have the never Trump or the bulwark or the dispatch mindset here of I'm so above it all. I'm so much better than everyone that I'm going to just do what's worst for our country. Alsobrooks really does suffer from lower profile than Larry Hogan. He is nationally known and he's popular in Maryland. Alsobrooks might have a good reputation in Maryland, but she has a low profile because she's known as kind of a local politician. Yeah.
No, I agree. And there's also the crime issue that is her biggest problem, because there's been rampant crime in Prince George's County. And it's happened under her watch. And I'll say this, too, if I could. And again, this is just my gut instinct, watching Maryland politics for about a dozen years. But I think, strangely, Larry Hogan is being assisted by Kamala Harris. Let me explain. When Joe Biden was the leader of the Democrats and going in with this nomination, Republicans in Maryland were probably just thinking that nothing mattered. Who cares? Trump's probably going to win. He's going to beat Joe Biden because he's polling so much better than him, and nobody gets excited about, we must stop Joe Biden, right? Because if you already think Trump's going to win, are you really going to get that energized for this election if you're a Maryland Democrat or Republican? Probably not. Now that it's Kamala Harris, as a Maryland Republican, Kamala Harris potentially winning this presidential campaign is an existential threat to the American way of life, and because it's closer now, I am much more energized to make sure that I get out and vote and other people get out and vote, because she must be stopped at all costs. And I think that there's a psychological change here where Republicans are like, oh, no, whatever I need to do to stop Kamala Harris. Because if you go back 2 months ago, if you can in your mind, considering everything that's happened, we felt like we were going to beat Joe Biden. It felt like the election was lining up so beautifully for Republicans that he was going to win so many states that would help the Senate, and my vote in Maryland wasn't going to be as critical. Now it feels more critical. Does that make sense?
It does.
So in a weird way, Kamala Harris becoming the nominee actually, I think, energizes the base to come out and hold their nose and vote for Larry Hogan.
Interesting.
We'll see. Another thing that I think helps him in this regard is that Kamala Harris being on the ticket linked with Angela Also Brooks. They're both kind of radical left-wing politicians. And Kamala Harris being there aligned with Angela Also Brooks highlights that part of her politics that much more. And I will say this, it's kind of interesting. Larry Hogan's major victories, his first time for governor, re-election for governor, and now for Senate, he has run against a very liberal, left-wing, African-American Democrat in Maryland, and he's won each time. I mean, I'm just looking at trends, and that could be part of the recipe for Larry Hogan's success is, yeah, I'm a Republican, but I'm not a radical, and I'm not a race-baiting radical like Ben Jealous, or Anthony Brown, or in this case, if he can parlay that, Angela Also Brooks. It's 5:54.